entrepreneurship has that glitz and glamour surrounding it right now, and everyone's trying to be that founder that makes it to the cover of Forbes and they stand there bold solo. But sometimes you can't do this journey alone.
You start to think, okay, God, like, you want us to do this, but it feels like it does come at a sacrifice of my personal ambitions.
I think when you are trying to create a business or found a business from a place of obedience, one of the biggest things obedience requires from you is humility and submission. And one of the best ways to train yourself in humility and submission is to partner with someone who you are accountable to, whose ideas you have to hear, and who you are leading with.
Being an entrepreneur, it's a hard thing to say, but you have to put personal feelings aside to make very difficult decisions. And I have found that quite hard in my entrepreneurship.
That's the thing that people don't see in this glamorization of like entrepreneurship. The personal sacrifice for business success is crazy. And I think one of the things that's like guided me through this journey is like, God, if I take care of your business, you have to take care of me.
Welcome to the latest episode of the Magnify Conversations. If you're new to Magnify, firstly, welcome. It's great to have you. Magnify is a platform focused on empowering ambitious women of faith to thrive in every area of our lives. I don't know about you, but I sometimes find faith can be really challenging and difficult to speak about in today's world. And that's why we've created this podcast.
The Magnify Conversations are all about bringing everyday, authentic women together to discuss faith, relationships, career, whatever's kind of important that we're speaking about at the moment.
My name is Ruth, and I'm the founder and CEO of Magnify.
And I'm Rachel, and I'll be the host of the Magnify Conversations.
So if you like this episode, don't forget to share with a friend, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel.
Today, we're sitting down to talk about what the journey of a founder looks like with guests Tobi Oredein and Courtney Daniella Boateng. Tobi is the CEO and founder of Black Ballad, a media company for and by Black women. She has secured a spot on Forbes Europe 30 Under 30 and made the Evening Standard's list of the most influential people in London. Courtney is an entrepreneur, content creator, author, and co-founder of To My Sisters, one of the fastest growing women's development communities. Let's get right into this conversation. So ladies, we're going to start with some quick fire questions. Are you ready?
Do it.
Courtney, we'll go with you first.
Okay.
If you had to give a TED talk, which topic would you speak on?
The power of sisterhood. Yeah, easy.
Brilliant.
Easy. I feel like you've already given a TED talk.
I've given a TED talk.
There you go.
I've given a TED talk.
Okay, so I'm going to change the question slightly. What was the TED talk on, first of all?
I spoke about beauty politics and black women and beauty politics at TEDx Tottenham. I did that.
Oh, incredible. Yeah. So when you do your next TED talk, what would it be on if you had a choice of anything?
The greatness of Beyonce.
Yeah, I like that.
How many years in the game?
Oh,
yeah,
the longevity.
The longevity, the impact.
The reincarnation of every era.
Yeah.
I think Beyonce.
Yeah.
Come on.
That.
There we go. Well, we look forward to hearing it, Tobi. What's a piece of advice that you often hear given to founders or entrepreneurs that you don't agree with?
Follow your heart.
Oh,
Don't believe
I know
it.
it's quick fire, but will you say a bit more on that?
Yeah, of course. I feel like the heart is a deceitful thing. And when it comes to business as well, there can be something you're really passionate about. Doesn't mean it's going to make sense and it's going to make money. And also sometimes when your heart is too invested in something, you don't make wise decisions and you don't make hard decisions. So passion is important, love for what you do is important, but don't make it the leading factor. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
Amazing. Tobi?
I would say, you know what, in terms, raise as much as you can. Like, you're encouraged to raise a lot of money when you're on the founder journey, especially if you're raising investment from a VC, and a VC is like a company that gives you money. And you're really encouraged to raise money like round after round. So like you raise like 100 grand in your first round, then it's $500,000 in your second round, and they encourage you to keep doing that. I wouldn't do that. Like, I think it's been a terrible piece of advice that too many founders have followed and kind of fell flat on. I wouldn't do it. It's too time-consuming to keep raising money. It's a job in itself, takes you away from your business. And then also, I think that like the more money you raise, the more pressure you get, and you grow at a speed that you're not even ready for. So the idea of like, you got to raise more money, it's a mark of success, I don't buy into that. I've never bought into that.
Can I ask then, what would you, if someone was asking you the question as a founder, how should I do this now? What would be your suggestion? And okay, it's like from your perspective, we're not going to hold you to it, but what would be your suggestion of like, this is the way I would do it?
I think it depends on what your business is about. But one of the things I think people need to understand, the power of community. You're competing for time and attention. Like if you're gonna get someone to go on your website to buy a product, that's time consuming. If you're gonna get someone to come to a space that you're creating, that's time consuming. So I would say grow your community, bootstrap first, and then be wise about what investment you take. And I think be wise about the type of investors you want and be wise about the amount that you want. So that's what I would say.
That's incredible. So really helpful as well.
Yeah. I've been on I've been on that journey.
I can tell that you that is something you've lived.
Lived.
It is.
Yeah.
It's lived experience. That's why it's so important. And then in terms of like a female leader, who's inspiring you most at the moment?
Oh, in terms of a female leader, Sharmadean Reed.
Yeah.
So I recently went to the Power Summit, which she holds every year, and just to get to sit down with her over lunch and hear the way her brain works and how she optimizes everything she does to be impactful was like, you're 10 steps ahead of all of us, actually. Yeah. So she's really, really cool. And I've been admiring her for a minute now.
Yeah. Good. Tobi?
Shamli's great. Emma Grede. She is the CEO of Good American Jeans, which she runs with Khloe Kardashian. She is a founding partner of Skims, which is fronted by Kim Kardashian. Then she's got I think it's called Safely. It's like a detergent business or something with Kris Kardashian. And I think, obviously you have people that are the face of businesses, and I'm not trying to discredit the Kardashians in any way, but I think Emma Grede and her husband Jens have done an amazing job of creating these businesses. And I think also knowing that they don't need to be the face to make the impact. I think as a founder, you need to identify where you are. And that isn't always in front of the camera. That isn't always in front of the limelight. And also, Emma Grede, I think she said something on a podcast and she said, the truth of the matter is, I can get in the room with Kris Jenner. She's not trying to pretend that there's some like magic secret. She's like, can you get in the room with the person? And I thought, you know what? That's just really honest advice. Like, just be honest about it. I think she's super honest. She's also from Plaistow, like me. Hey. Big up East London. So from Plaistow, like me. And she really makes a concerted effort to put back into women of colour entrepreneurs. And I like that. And I think like when you have a passion calling and you can, pay it forward and open the door behind you when you've had so much success, I think that's really something to admire.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's amazing. And today we're going to be talking about obedience as a founder, diligence. Also, like, how do you keep going when things maybe aren't paying off in the way that you hoped? And you've both got incredible experience of that and you're on the journey with that. So it'd be great, first of all, Courtney, just to hear from you about, I guess, how you got into founding or the business that you're working in now, or the community, should I say, that you're growing now, because we know it's more than a business.
Yeah, there we go. I think that's the thing. It's been an interesting journey over the last 5 years. I was the founder of a e-commerce beauty brand for 3 years, and that was doing really well, thoroughly enjoyed it, but I was interacting with women on a daily basis who, would come into my studio, my salon, wanting to feel beautiful, but would sit in the chair and be like, this is a therapy session. Let's talk about relationships, confidence, my career, my faith, my everything. And I think as a hairstylist, being that close to them, I got to hear the most vulnerable, transparent and honest conversations. And that's just been a core part of my life and my personal journey in general, having sometimes hard and difficult conversations, but always ending them feeling encouraged, feeling empowered, and like, okay, now I need to go and sort my life out. And one of the key people I've had those conversations with has been my best friend, Renee. And so during the pandemic, when everyone's in isolation and feeling lonely, we were leaning on each other heavily to just be each other's support system, and to actually be best friends. And so She had just come back from Harvard studying her master's. I was in the thick of growing this business, which was also rapidly growing because of the pandemic and just the boom for online shopping. And we were just like, we haven't got this adulting thing figured out. And if it wasn't for these 5-hour calls we're having every day, I don't know where we'd be.
No one has that adulting thing figured out.
But that's the thing, right? So that's the thing,
to
like,
your point.
to the point, like, we are two very ambitious, you know, women, and people would look at us and be like, oh my gosh, you went to Oxford, you went to Harvard, you went to Cambridge, you've got this business, you're killing it. And we're like, no, we don't know. We don't know what we're doing. And then we're looking up to, like, you know, amazing boss women who are leading and building amazing things. And we're like, did they have it figured out? Like, what are we missing? And we'll just spend hours on the phone talking, like, about all these different topics. And I think everyone and their mum had the idea during the pandemic, like, let's start a podcast. But I had wanted to start one previously and it just didn't feel like the right time. And I feel like God was very much like, nah, this is the right time. This is what, I had always had the name since university. So like for 3-4 years prior to that moment, I'd known the name because it was really like an open letter to our sisters. Like, this wasn't about, you know, two people who you want to learn from and they're gurus. No, we are peers. We're just trying to figure this life thing out and we're just going to do it on a mic. And so, yeah, we started it November 2020. The first two My Sisters podcasts came out and it was titled Frenemies. And we talked about how with our friendship, we've had to learn to support each other and not compete with one another because we've been doing this life so closely, and it looks so similar, and we've only just started diverting. You know, we went to similar universities, we had similar upbringings, we went to secondary school together, and now I'm on this path of being a founder. She's going down this really strong academia route. And so it's like, oh, now life looks different. People started to compare. And so we were just like, let's have a really honest conversation. Like, has this thing ever seeped into our hearts? Have we ever become frenemies? And it took off. Like, after 6 months, we had like 100,000 downloads. And I think we got to that 6-month mark and we were like, there's something here. And it's so much more than just a podcast. And we've always wanted to be God-led in everything we've done as two believers. And we're just kind of like, God, like, this feels so connected to our purpose and a desire to help women, whether it be through education, through entrepreneurship, whatever it is. So what do you want this to be? And we just felt like this is more than just a podcast, it's a community. And it really is a community that's going to demonstrate the power of sisterhood, the power of friendship. And in a world where, you know, we were going through a global pandemic, but then there's also this pandemic of loneliness. We were like, you know what, let's combat that. You know, let's talk about how you can't do life alone and you're never made to do that. And so at the 6-month mark, we were like, we're going to build Two My Sisters into a media company, but also a social impact company where we have this massive global community. Can we pool resources to be able to have positive change for women all around the world? And that's what we've been doing now. We're nearly 3 years old. We're about to celebrate our 3rd year anniversary at the end of the week. Woo! And literally, it's crazy. We were both talking on Instagram recently about how our anniversary event is going to be at Hackney Empire, which is like this really iconic event space in London, or theatre in London. And it's like 1,200 women come in, and it's just like, we started this literally in my childhood bedroom with like mics attached to my windowsill that kept falling off every 10 minutes, so we had to restart.
Kind of a problem in
literally,
a podcast.
you know. The sound is everything, and you're just hearing rickety, rickety. It was a lot, but now we've got 1,200 women gathered in just one city, and we've done, you know, things in New Orleans and Bali and Tanzania, and we've built a school in Ghana this year, and it's like we're starting to see the community power that we wanted, and it's only growing. And so now, we are growing into a bigger business, but into a bigger community, and that's been the evolution of TMS so far.
That's incredible.
Amazing.
So good.
Thank you.
Tobi, how about you? Like, tell us a bit about yourself and then how you came to be a founder and what you're doing now.
So my professional career started as a journalist. I was that kid at school. I did really well academically, but I would rather read a magazine than a book. This is the truth. I'd rather read a magazine than a book. So I'd always imagined myself being a journalist. I was very intentional as a child. Like, I'm very intentional potential. Like, I have everything mapped out. So I was like, I'm going to go to a great university in London because that's where all the magazine houses are. I went to King's College London. And then I was like, I'm going to intern on the side. So I used my part-time job to get an internship in their in-house magazine. I then jumped to their PR, their in-house PR, and then I ended up being on a shoot for Company magazine because my boss at the time at this PR company was like, oh, they're doing an internship for like, so they're doing a photo shoot for interns who dress cool. And I think you dress cool, so you should go and do the shoot at Company. And I was on the set, I took these pictures, I got up, I said, can I have an internship? And they was like, what? And I was like, yeah. I was like, can I have an internship? And they was like, you're really bold. I was like, yeah. So I got an internship with Company magazine, I started interning, and then eventually got a job out of uni, freelance. And I started to look at these magazines and I feel like they're very problematic. Everyone in women's lifestyle is very thin, very middle class, not disabled, and white. And I realised I was getting these freelance jobs, but I couldn't get a actual like permanent position. And at the time, City University released the statistic that 94% of journalists in Britain were white, and that only 0.2% of black journalists, 0.2% of journalists were black. And at the time, black people were 3% of the UK and 13% of London. So, and obviously when you look at the media, you don't need to think far about how askew the stories are about black communities and black women actually in particular. And then I was just fed up and I was just like, do you know what? Like, if no one's gonna give me a job, I'm gonna create my own job. Like, I'm gonna give myself a job. And what made it worse was I kept applying for jobs. And I actually got a job at a publication and I'd been looking for like nearly a year. I went on stage at church and gave testimony, only to get an email to say, yeah, we're not gonna be able to offer you that job anymore next day. And I was like, oh, what? And I remember someone saying to me at the time, a friend was like, God is talking to you about something else. Like, I think like you need to do something else. And I had a dream actually that I was in a garden and it was very like this, but like really big.
Full circle moment.
What are you going to say next?
Really big. And there was a little girl in the garden and I remember my best friend at the time said like, don't you see this is like God planting something? You can bloom something really special. Like, you need to kind of stop banging on other people's doors. And someone else told me that. And then my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, was like, I don't think you're supposed to like keep asking people for jobs. Like, I just don't think you are. And then I convinced him to be my business partner. I was like, there's nothing for black women in the UK, you know, nothing that's like beyond like hair. Like, we should do something that can compete with like the Cosmos and Els and Stylists. And then within 6 months, I launched Black Ballad. And it was supposed to be a free blog that was supposed to get me back into mainstream like journalism. So I thought it was gonna be a short-term project. Gathered all my friends, can you imagine? Gathered all my friends. I was like, yeah, can you just lend me your skills, your writing skills, your proofreading skills? We launched Black Ballad and I was so shocked at how black women responded. They loved it. They like, it was kind of like, whoa, like I didn't think it was gonna be this impactful. And yeah, it grew. We ended up doing a crowdfund about 2 years later to convert into a membership platform. And that took place between 2016 and 2017. And then we realised that people were willing to pay for our content. And we was actually the first lifestyle platform in Britain to actually ask people to pay for this content. And I remember one of my journalism heroes, I spoke to him, he said, don't do it, no one will pay for it. And I was like, okay. And I was like, okay. And then it was like, do I listen to my gut, which is the Holy Spirit and God, or do I listen to man? And I, you know, went forward with this business model. And we've not looked back. Nearly 1,500 paying members. We've raised investment. Next year's our 10-year anniversary and we have something huge planned. So that's the journey of Black Ballad, really. Started as a journalist and now find myself as sitting as CEO. Nearly paid like, I think we've paid like over £800,000 to black women since 2017. We're on track to pay black women $1 million for their services next year and that will be one of our big targets. So that's the journey that I've been on.
I know when we've spoken, you said that your husband actually described you as a reluctant founder.
Reluctant. He calls me the reluctant entrepreneur.
A reluctant entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I just need to know where does that come from? Like, so in your understanding of entering into his brain, like, what?
My husband studied business at university. He's very entrepreneurial. And I had this thing that I'd never date a man that does business at university. I don't even know why I had this whole thing about like
that. And God's like,
every single time.
I would never date. I'd never date anyone that's shorter than me. I'd never date anyone that has an entrepreneurship, a business degree. And my husband is, I'm 5'10", he's 5'9", and he has a business degree from a business school. So yeah, God is like, you're gonna really eat your words. But he's so entrepreneurial. Like he always sees business as a service. Like you're serving someone, and he says it can when you do it right, it can really fix problems. And I'll be honest, I just said I want a 9 to 5. I said I literally just want a 9 to 5. I wanted to work at a particular magazine and make a particular change, and I just didn't like the. Entrepreneurship comes with a lack of stability that I think people do not recognise, and I had seen it, not from like close friends or anything, not from close family, but I just think, kind of like being around friends whose parents had businesses, seeing them kind of like go up and down. You go to churches and you hear people's stories that I had this business, I had this shop, and it didn't work out, and that really scared me. So I was like, oh no, I never wanted my own business, and now here I sit.
10 years later.
10 years later. So yeah.
Do you still? Because obviously you're on this journey. Yeah. You are a founder, and you run an incredible community and organisation. Do you still feel that reluctance coming back every so often? Like, do you feel that's your default, or have you broken through that?
I think I've broken through that. Like, I think I'd actually probably find it hard to go back into a business. Not because I can't work for anyone, but I think sometimes people take too long to make changes. Like, I work with brands and I see the bureaucracy that goes on. And sometimes if you actually want to make change, you can fundamentally make it. You just want to do all the crossing the T's and dotting the I's. I think I'm very impatient, and I like the fact, with Black Ballad, like, an example was that, not criticised, but someone said, what about black women outside of London? Okay, you said it. 4 months later, we got a 2020 campaign. It was 9 weeks of content about black women who don't live in London. Literally just did it like that. And I really like that as an entrepreneur. I think the thing that I struggle with is the lack of stability, is the fact that, you can have a great financial year one year, and then the next year, we have been in an economic downturn, and it means that, like, okay, we're not going to hit that 1 million that we thought we was going to hit based on last year. Okay, I need to make changes. And, you're responsible for those changes. And sometimes being an entrepreneur, it's a hard thing to say, but you have to put personal feelings aside to make very difficult decisions. And I have found that quite hard in my entrepreneurship. And I think I've actually found it hard due to my faith. I think sometimes I've needed to make a very tough decision, and I've not wanted to look like a bad person because, I'm very open about my faith. Even in my company, like, not everyone that works for Black Ballad is Christian, and that's actually fine. But, I've been very open that I am a Christian, and, like, I feel like this is God-led. This is ministry to me, actually.
Absolutely.
This is ministry. Me serving black women is ministry. And then you might see someone do something that's wrong, and you might need like a firmer approach than what I've had in the past. And I think I've found that quite difficult, the lack of stability, and I think getting across a message in a way that needs to be a firmer hand, because I care too much about what I look like, and that's actually backfired in the end. So
So real.
Yeah.
How have you made that jump then? So from being like, I'm concerned, I need a firmer hand, to being like, actually, this is okay. Like, did you like seek help with that? Did you just need to like have a bit more confidence? Like, I'd just love to know, because the reason I asked Tobi is so many women who are listening to this will be in seats like you're both sat in, founders or they're leading a business, and they're Christian, so they've got a certain set of values, but then also they're trying to run a business or an organisation, and they want it to be on point, values led, and to the culture that they're trying to create. So it can create a bit of a dichotomy.
Yeah. I actually just looked at the work and I had to be like, if you're not working as hard as everybody else and you're bringing down like the level, I have to talk to you about it. You may not like it. And also, if you're making a million mistakes and it means that I've got to clean up the mess, I'm not just a founder, I'm a mum. I need to be in and out more than ever now. So it was kind of like, when the mistakes grow too much, that I can't cover it anymore, or it's becoming too much on my mental health in terms of like, I'm worried about you doing a task because I don't even think you can get it right. You just have to have that conversation. And I think also, people are always going to believe the narrative they have of you in their head. Like,
no matter what you say.
No matter what I do. Like, I could like lay down the red carpet for you and say, oh my God, like, what is wrong? Like, can we talk about it? But the moment I say to you, like, you know what, this has actually gone too far, you're going to have a narrative in your head that I'm the worst person in the world. But I know who I am in God's eyes. I know who I am to my family, and I know who I am when I look in the mirror. And to me, that's why I sleep well at night. That's why I'm now able to make certain decisions and say certain things. And I think I think also, women are critiqued far more than men that have to make these decisions. So for me, knowing that, and also, let's be honest, there's a racial element here for me as well. You know, as a black woman that is leading black women as well, you know, sometimes there's a pressure to be, you know, give more grace than like I should. And I think, you know, when that has come to a head and people have had a narrative of me, it's like, okay, that is your narrative. And if that's what makes you sleep well at night, that is between you and your mirror. But I know my version of events and I can sleep easy, and that's just it, to be honest.
So you've kind of had to become comfortable with being misunderstood.
Comfortable being misunderstood, misinterpreted. Also, it sounds, being comfortable being the bad guy, actually.
Yeah.
I think, you know, being the one to say, like, this is just not working, I can't then go and say, like, to my husband who's COO, you know, can you just do this for me, you know, because, like, it's getting a little bit uncomfortable. I don't want to be the bad guy.
Exactly.
Like, you know, so, but also, like, to anyone listening, you can like people and you can really like the people in your company, but if you're looking at the numbers, if you're looking at the work and it just isn't to the level that is needed, I have to remind myself, Black women pay for my content, and I have a far bigger responsibility to make sure that they are getting their money's worth, that they think the standard is still there, than keeping someone happy. And it's a hard dynamic, but I have been there, I've had to navigate it, and I think that also, you know, I'm 34, like, it's about time that I get comfortable in who I am and like how I express myself. And, you know, I'm not the perfect boss. And that's just it.
Oh, I love that.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's so, because it's so true. Renee and I talk about this in our book where we talk about being the villain. You're always going to be the villain in someone's story.
Always.
Like,
and in someone's eyes.
And in someone's eyes, exactly. Yeah. And especially as a woman who's advocating for other women to use their voice, you would be doing everyone a disservice to not use yours. Right? So, and sometimes people aren't going to like what you say and how you say it. But I love what you're saying, like, you have to steward this ministry well, right? And so that means that actually you're forfeiting so much by not having that awkward conversation with that person. And as the leader or something, it's actually on you. You're the one held accountable to your investors, to the people who sit on your board, is up to keep the quality high. And so as much as you need to, you know, that person's going to have an uncomfortable time or feel like, you know, maybe you didn't give me grace. I'm not going to get grace from other people. And also sometimes this is actually what grace looks like, right? Which is me covering or, you know, making sure that I get rid of this issue before it becomes even amplified by not addressing it and nipping it in the bud now.
And I think also another thing, and I think it's so true about, like, when you're a founder, everyone sees your good and bad points because you're across everything, but you see everyone else's good and bad points. And what people in your team, like, you don't see everyone, if you're a team member, you don't see everyone else's good and bad points. Like, as a founder, like, if you've made a mistake, the team is not going to know that you've messed up payroll. I've messed up payroll. Do you know what I mean?
Of course.
And then if I'm constantly covering you, you know, we've got to have that conversation. And it's kind of, it is really difficult, but it is a conversation that's needed. And also someone said something to me. If my business goes down, my husband doesn't work a full-time job where I can just be like, okay, I'm going to take a couple of months out and, you know, you're just going to cover nursery fees and rent and all of that. We're both in this together. So for me, there's a lot more on the line with Black Ballad because I work with my husband. If this goes down...
It's your whole household.
It's the whole household. Yeah. Someone said it to me and I was like, I never thought of it like that.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. And I remember, like, when I told my husband, I was like, why was someone saying to you? I said, you know what? I know it sounds like quite like, it was said very bluntly, but it was just so true.
It was what you needed.
And I think actually God used that person to speak to me because it was at a time when I was really battling how to communicate like with staff members that I didn't think personally were doing the job well. And I just thought, you know what, if I'm not going to see it from a professional lens, then Tobi, by God, like you owe it to not just your husband, but your children to make sure that this thing carries on and carries on well. So I think there's just so much to think about when you're doing a business. I mean, like for you and Renee, you know, if you're working with other freelancers, you know, your friendship is really important. You know what I mean? Like you've got to make sure that this thing carries on because at the end of the day, if it does or it doesn't, it will have an effect on your friendship. You can't deny that it will or won't.
There's a lot more on the line.
There's a lot more on the line when you do it with someone that's personal to you.
And as well as, I guess, like actually serve, you know, we talked about serving communities and actually this isn't, you've both spoken to and you've alluded to, Courtney, like this is essentially something that you feel God has asked you to carry. You've had a dream about it. It was the name of To My Sisters was birthed in you like before. I guess you even maybe knew what it was.
People were coming to me and being like, I don't know what this is. This is before podcasts. I hadn't even graduated from uni. They're like, I don't know what this is, but I just see a vision of like a book that has the words To My Sisters on it.
Oh, wow.
Don't know what that is. And I'm like, God, I hear you, but I need to finish my degree, okay? But yeah, this was definitely a God-led thing, and I think that puts a certain level of responsibility on it as well. And also, like, it does make making the hard decisions harder because you're not just thinking, what do I feel? What do I want? You're actually thinking like, God, what do you want? What are you doing? And like, there's an element of having faith, and faith is tricky, right? And it comes in it's grown in the face of challenge and what seems undoable. And I think that's what this whole journey has taught me. Like, if God is leading you through something, it's probably going to be one of the hardest things you're ever going to do, but it's going to be one of the best.
It's our privilege to have these meaningful conversations, and we hope you're enjoying them. As a registered charity, it's thanks to our generous donors and partners that we're able to bring the Magnify conversations to you, and we know there is so much more ahead. If you've been impacted by any of the chats we've had with these amazing women and want to continue seeing them, why not consider supporting us?
You can find out how to by visiting www.magnifycollective.com/donate and then financially giving in any way you feel led to. We're so grateful to you for being with us in this season, and we hope you find real value in this episode. I think also what you were saying about like serving communities, that you're there to serve your community. And it's like you were saying, Tobi, if I don't challenge work ethic, if I don't challenge the standard of work, actually that's not just about, I feel comfortable now, I'm just going to go sit over there. But almost letting down the women that you're trying to serve. Then also, if you think about this as an act of like ministry, you use the word ministry and like obedience to God. It's like, God, I want to be able to feel like I'm honouring what you've given me to do with excellence, to the highest standard, to the best of my ability. And we still check our motivation and all of that, but it also doesn't mean you are the villain, even if in someone else's eyes you are. So I think as founders and as women working hard with teams as well, when you're seeing results and you're seeing fruit, it's amazing. You're like, I don't mind doing this extra. I don't mind like giving my everything to this. When you're not seeing the fruit, you're not seeing the result, that's harder. Maybe you're not getting the feedback that you want. The numbers maybe aren't going in the direction they should. It can be incredibly hard to stick on the path. Have you had any experience of that, Courtney?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Especially being a digital entrepreneur and like having to use the internet to really maximize like impact and grow this community, you just realize how much everything is driven by metrics. And that's just business in general, right?
Yeah.
Like numbers, clicks, views, likes, subscribers, mailing lists. Like you've got all these different metrics you're keeping your eye on. And now that we're collaborating more with brands and we're trying to take this thing even further, more people are like, oh yeah, what you're doing is great, we so believe in it, but is this going to make business sense? And then you're kind of like, okay, as much as I believe in this vision and I really believe in, you know, this message of sisterhood and the power of this community, if we can't convey on a presentation how impactful this isn't going to work, you know? And so there have been times where we've looked at numbers and thought, especially like financial numbers, and thought, you know what, no, we need to get our entrepreneurship hats on. As much as we're in love with this thing, we need to make this work for the sake of ourselves and for the sisterhood. And there have been times when we've gone back to God, myself and my co-founder Renee, and we've been like, listen, God, this was a vision you gave us. So if you don't start shifting some things around, we're going to come back to you. And we've definitely had to take a few steps back sometimes to think, this digital sisterhood thing could be anything, right? Where as founders, you're really in a creative position where it's like you said, if somebody brings a suggestion, you can actually implement that change straight away. So I think being at the, you know, the forefront of this thing, steering the wheel of this venture together, we've had to sit down and think, logically, what actually makes the most sense, what direction makes sense for us to go in. And we've had to have those really hard conversations, but I think the thing that keeps us going is knowing that this is a call from God and an assignment. And until he says it's done and that season's over, there's still something to fight for, right? There's still something that's clearly trying to happen, and that women need as well. And I think you pay attention to the fact that there are still problems, there are still things that haven't been solved. And as much as it may feel difficult, I always see things in a very formulaic way, because I'm like quite mathematical, and I'm like, no, we just haven't found that, we're just not working the formula right. We have all of these different factors and we just need to find how they make the perfect equation and what we need to do. And so let's keep working the numbers, let's go back to the drawing board on things, but let's not just scrap it. You know, there is a solution here, and I think God gives us wisdom, he gives us community, he gives us people who give us their insight, and like all these female founders I've been exposed to over the last couple of months, it's been so nice hearing how other people are solving problems in a creative way, because that's all we do as entrepreneurs. We're problem solvers. Every day, that's all we're doing. We're solving problems. And so it's now picking up on the different formulas that are out there that I didn't even know could solve the problems that we have. Has it been discouraging at times? Yeah, there have been many times. I think even in the lead up to hosting our biggest event ever, holding international retreats, like being less than 3 years old, we're still very new at this, working together with your best friend and having to juggle all these things that are on the line. Like, we live together, we work together, we are best friends, and like we're all going through personal changes in our lives as well. Plus we're in that stage of your 20s where everything is changing. We're also like, this is a lot of pressure. And there have been a lot of times we've gone to bed crying. We've cried in each other's arms, and we've just been like, this isn't working how we thought it would work. But also we always have this mantra, like, this is all gonna go in the book, right? In the story. This is what makes our autobiography amazing. These challenging seasons of, we had no money in the account, we didn't know how we were going to pay the rent, we didn't know how we were going to pay the freelancers. These are all what make it interesting, because then when God does it, because he will do it, it's then going to be a testament of the fact that this is something we couldn't have built on our own, right? It really was a miracle, it was a blessing. And I think those are the things that set you apart, especially when you are a Christian entrepreneur or like a faith-based entrepreneur and you're leading something. You realize that it's not just in the character you show the people you work with, it's in your dependency on God that you're building this company. And so sometimes you're not going to have all of the answers, but you know that God's taking you on for a really good ride. May not always look good at every stage, but yeah, I think for us, it's been surrounding ourselves with community and having each other. I think doing this with someone else has been a blessing, right? I was a solo entrepreneur before, a solo founder, and it was hard because no one else understands. No one sees the numbers. No one, as much as you can describe it to them, even if they see everything, when they're not in your shoes, they just don't get it.
You're bearing a lot of weight on your own as
hugely,
a solo founder. Initially, especially.
Hugely. And it's just been nice to share that burden, even in some of the most challenging times, to look over to your best friend and we're just going to laugh about it. Like, it's going to be funny at some point anyway. And it's just been nice to have that comfort. But also, we always say, like, there's this saying, especially in like West African culture, like, oh, that person doesn't have two heads, especially when, like, do you get what I mean? Like, oh, so for example, if you come home with like a B in maths, and then like your parents ask you, okay, did anybody else get an A or an A star? And you're like, yeah. And they're like, does that person have two heads? No, you can do it. We always joke about how like the other people who have succeeded in this space, even though we are succeeding and we just know where God is trying to take us to and is trying to get there. And we're like, the other people in this space who are doing it don't have two heads. But we do. We actually do have two heads. So let's figure this thing out, you know? And I think there's something beautiful in that. We have two heads. We can collaborate in our thinking. We can bring our strengths together. And there's that scripture that talks about how one will chase 1,000, but two will chase 10,000. We definitely rely on the blessing that is us multiplying our impact because of collaboration. And that's what our whole ethos of sisterhood is about, but that's what our friendship has been in our lives. Even in the most, like, outside of being founders and entrepreneurs, when we were just applying to uni and having a lot of pressure put on us based on, you know, you're two young black girls from North London, what you're going to do with your life, what you're going to turn out into, we were there to help alleviate some of the pressure just by being friends. And so it's just nice that I've been able to do this journey with my friend, and she's a good friend as well. So I would say, like, I know friendship and business is a very tricky subject, and you're doing marriage and business.
We'll come to that in a minute.
But I think have a support, have someone who you can lean on. And I know that entrepreneurship has that glitz and glamour surrounding it right now, and everyone's trying to be that founder that makes it to the cover of Forbes and they stand there bold solo. But sometimes you can't do this journey alone. Yeah,
I think that's so helpful as well, Courtney, just to hear, like, actually, we do hear a lot about a lot of solo founders, and that's incredible too. That will be the story of many of the Magnify community. But just that permission to be like, actually, that's okay. It may happen with a co-founder. It may 100%. Be that you need more people around you who can carry, 100%. I guess, the weight, the burden at that level.
Especially if God is calling you to do something big. You're not going to be able to do it on your own. And also there's a way to maximize what you're doing. And it does mean that you don't get all the glory for yourself. And I think when you are trying to create a business or found a business from a place of obedience, one of the biggest things obedience requires from you is humility and submission. And one of the best ways to train yourself in humility and submission is to partner with someone who you are accountable to, whose ideas you have to hear, and who you are leading with, because it keeps you in check. And there is a thing about, like, you know, when you're the leader and you're the solo leader and you're leading employees or a team of freelancers, you think you can just do anything anyhow. And it's like, no, when you have a co-founder there, especially one who shares and is aligned in your values and your beliefs and cares about your soul, you have to remain integral. And I think there is that temptation to be like, I'm just going to go on this journey alone. Rarely have people gone about things alone and succeeded or not found themselves in a big trap along the way.
Tobi, so, you know, we're approaching now 10 years of Black Ballads. And you're in this with your husband. You are co-leading this vision, really, in this community. You must have had times in the 10 years where it's kind of been like, it's clear for you this was something that you feel God has asked you to do. But there must have been times where you just thought, can you take it away? or I want to be obedient, but actually it's hard to be obedient.
Yeah, I think there's so many times. I think, like, we work with brands, and, you know, there was this whole big thing that brands want more diverse, you know, audiences, and, you know, and then you get there, you do the pitch, and they're like, oh yeah, not quite right. And you're like, I've put a lot of time and effort into this. What are we doing wrong? So that's like a hard thing, especially when that's our main source of revenue. I think for me, what's been hard to be obedient is, you know, the financial implications of being a founder. Like, time and time again, we've sacrificed a house deposit to put into our business.
Oh, I've been there.
And you start to think, okay, God, like, you know, you want us to do this, but it feels like it does come at a sacrifice of my personal ambitions and what I want for my family. And that's been really hard. And I think even last year and this year, I did say to my husband, like, do you think we're still supposed to be doing this? Do you think, especially, and it's hard because, you know, the community that know Black Ballad love Black Ballad. They're always like, it's amazing. I mean, I was, a couple of weeks ago somewhere, someone said, I said it's lifestyle content. They said it's life-saving content for Black women. Ooh, wow. And I was like, wow, that's how you really feel about it. And, you know, we've always said, you know, we want to make sure, and obviously there's rightful criticisms around capitalism and stuff like that. But we've always said, you know, being in a capitalist society, we need to make sure we're paying Black women for their time and their talents. And we've always prided ourselves on that. But sometimes it's kind of felt for me, okay, I'm paying Black women, but when is this going to really pay off for me and for us and our family? And I think this year I really asked God, like, are we supposed to be doing this? And I didn't know. It was my husband that said, I think we're still supposed to be doing this, you know? Because I was really like, I don't know, but I think how I look at it is, although I'm the founder, I feel like I'm a custodian of Black Ballad. And I think that's why I'm here to serve Black women, and maybe I was the first, but by the grace of God, I won't be the last. And I think for me, I'm trying to build this so when the time is right, I can pass this on. I said this to somebody and someone nearly fell down. I was like, I'm not saying anytime soon. So if anyone's watching, I'm not saying that I'm leaving anytime soon. Oh my God, my team would kill me. My team would be like, what? Like, what did you say on this podcast? Like, what? No, to the team. So to Jenny, Nicole, no, I'm not thinking about leaving things. But I do think, for me, it's been like, I'm trying to be so obedient, but God, there are things that I want for me and my family that I've sacrificed. Like, it's been 10 years, when is this going to pay off? But I think what keeps me driven is that my hope and my prayer is that this gets to a point that when I'm ready to pass it over, it's in the best condition possible. And I can walk away and say, like, you know what, like, we did a good job. This is still going to do what it said it's going to do, and that's tell the truth for Black women on their own terms.
100%.
So that's kind of how I stay obedient. And also, I guess the thing is, when we prayed about it, we actually prayed about it with my in-laws, and if we wanted to still do this, if I wanted to still do this. And my in-laws are an incredible source of support in that way. My husband, we got off a call, my husband said to me, but what else would you want to do? He was like, you've prayed about it. What has God put in your heart to do? And I just didn't have anything else. And every time I felt like maybe this shouldn't be going any further, God has always come in with something and said, yeah, no, you're going to stay here. Like, every time it's come close to the line, I've said, God, really? Is there still a business in this? You see an email and it's like, oh, okay. Or you're like, the numbers aren't working, and like one of the things that people don't know is that, like, you know, I think sometimes being a founder, there are perceptions, right? And, you know, there's a perception of the founder that goes on holiday, and, you know, every time they get a bit of money, it's like, oh, I'm going to buy a car. I wish. I wish. But, you know, as a founder, you also have the responsibility that you're paying other people first. Other people have rent, kids and responsibilities, and sometimes paying all the time that we paid people first, we get paid last. And that might mean that I might have to wait for, you know, next week's pay run, because if I take out our salary, well, what is the working capital that's left and stuff like that? And we've been in that position a few times, you know, where I've had to say, I need to maybe not take my salary right now. When we had a situation last year and it was really close to the line, and I had to be like, and we sat down and did the maths. We said, everyone else can get paid, but me and you need to hope and pray that this person is going to come in next week before our bills go out. But then I think you think of, you know, Matthew 6, and, you know, from 25 to 33, and God talks about how he's, you know, provided for, like, the birds, and, you know, how much more will he do for us? And I think I've relied on that scripture a lot, and I've read it, especially in moments of, like, God, like, I can't do this. I can't do this. Like, you can't keep making me provide for every other black woman, but I'm feeling like I'm out here. And, you know,
I'm a black woman struggling.
What about me?
Yeah.
You know, and I've looked at that scripture a lot, and I think, like, relying on my community, relying on my co-founder to really be my human strength when I felt like I couldn't do it. And then looking to God, and I think just seeing that, like, you know, this has to be passed on, and I have to play my part. And it is a part, and I think that, you know, being the first CEO of Black Ballad is a pressure, but as I said, by God's grace, I will not be the last.
Amen to that. And you've definitely been doing it, because I feel like even publications like Black Ballad paved the way for things like TMS to even come through. So you've been killing it, and you've been doing it. And I totally resonate with that place of, like, God, I don't know if we can do this anymore. Like, as much as we may even want to be obedient, obedience comes with a heavy price.
It does.
So the personal sacrifice element in the middle of it.
And I think that's the thing that people don't see in this glamorization of, like, entrepreneurship. The personal sacrifice for business success is crazy. And I think one of the things that's, like, guided me through this journey is, like, God, if I take care of your business, you have to take care of me.
Yes.
That's it. Like, you know what? If we can just be like a medium, we'll flow resources to other people who need it, then but, you know, you need a vessel to do this through. So take care of me, please.
It literally that. And I think also, when you're a founder, you know you have a privilege, right?
Yeah.
Like, I know for me, I can say it's a personal privilege of that, like, I can take whatever meeting I want. Like, no one is telling me at 4 o'clock that I have to, you know, stay because I can't go and pick up my kids. There's such a personal privilege, and I understand that, you know, I get to do what I actually want for a living, and I get paid for it. And that is a huge privilege. And I think sometimes because you have that privilege, you also have to be mindful that you're not complaining about the very things that your friends want, right?
Exactly.
Because your friends are sitting here telling you, oh, you know, I wish I could do this, I wish I could do that. And maybe I'm looking at them, but, like, because you're not doing that, you have the house, you have all of these things. So it's kind of like, well,
different sacrifices.
Completely different.
And it's kind of like, and I think I very quickly snapped out of, like, I'm not going to compare my journey. I don't have to answer, apart from God's, because, like, you know, there's some decisions I said, am I supposed to do this, God? I don't know, let me do it. God said, I told you not to do that. I told you not to run that article, because now it's not gone anywhere, and you just, like, wasted money. So, like, but there is a privilege in being a founder that you do have to be thankful for. But in that privilege, I think sometimes you don't want to express to everybody the personal sacrifices. One, because you don't want to be insensitive. 2, because people have a perception of you, and everyone thinks you're doing great, and you're like, I don't really feel like that. And I think those two things can take a mental toll, actually. It can take a mental toll. And I think I've definitely been in that position where it's like, I don't want to be insensitive to you, and you're complaining about your job, and, you know, like, all the things you've got to do that you don't want to do. But at the same time, like, these personal sacrifices and being obedient, they can take its toll. And you start to feel like, even I've had a conversation with God, and, like, God, for me wanting money, am I selfish? Am I really doing it for the right reasons? Like, if it's ministry, then why am I talking about, okay, you know, after 10 years, I kind of want to see some more zeros in my bank account. Like, where's the payment? Like, it sounds really bad. It's like, I've been on, like, well, I had 2 kids in COVID. Don't ask why I did that. But no, I did. It was they're amazing kids. But it's kind of like, you know, we want to take them on more holidays. We want to give them more cultural experiences. But it's kind of like, I can't really do that right now because we're in the thick of it. After 10 years, we're still in the thick of this business. It's still a startup. And I've asked God's questions like, am I a bad person, a bad Christian? Because I kind of feel like I love this business. I know it's ministry, but But now I'm really looking at you and saying like, well, you need to provide and give me the abundance that I think I deserve, actually. That I think I deserve. Whether anyone else thinks that,
in my opinion,
like I am the one that gets up at 5 and and works till sometimes God knows what hours. Like I sent an email today and I realised it's supposed to be before our meeting tomorrow. No, it's for our meeting today because I'm sending it in early hours in the morning. I'm like, I'm making those sacrifices. So I want to see that financial abundance. And I've really questioned how I feel as a founder in asking God for that. And that's I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. And I don't even know what that answer is. And that can be quite confusing at times.
Yeah, neither do I, sis. That's a whole podcast episode in itself, I'm telling you.
Listen, please.
And I've definitely been there where it's like, God, what about me? And I think you ask yourself that question a lot, like, what about me? And comparison is one of the biggest things that creeps in as a founder, because there is no straight track that you can compare yourself to. So you're left to compare yourself to other people.
And what you can see.
Exactly, and what you can see. And it can look very glamorous on the outside. But behind the scenes, there are so many things like just trying to hold everything together, and people don't see that. And I think that's why, like, for me, this journey has been about surrounding myself with a lot of free, not even purposefully, I think just by nature of the work that I do. Like, I'm surrounded by a lot of freelancers, founders, people who have been on this entrepreneurial journey or who are doing a side hustle whilst, working full time. And you definitely learn that God's plan for everyone is actually very different.
Yes.
And the challenges everyone's going to face is going to look very different. But one thing they can all do, even my friends who are surrounding me who aren't in this at all, they are teachers and they want to climb that career ladder, they can empathize. And I think it's just empathizing with the fact that there's that human desire to secure things for your family, to feel like you are being provided for, to feel like you have security. And one thing that I'm so thankful that I have around me is a community of people who are actually more interested in my obedience to God than the things that I have, my family, my friends. I have so many people who are like, well, God, what is God saying? I remember during the pandemic, I was thinking okay, I don't know if I want to do this business thing anymore. But I don't know what I want to jump into. Maybe I'll go and do law. Maybe I'll, go and study theology and just do this really drastic pivot. And my dad, who's not saved, was like, what's God saying to you? Because I know he's important to you. And I was like, hold on a minute, what? Is this an angel? And even that, people just knowing that a core value to you isn't money. It's obedience. It's God being able to say, well done. And I was just like, wow, keep holding me accountable to that. Even though it is uncomfortable, I think the way we get paid sometimes is even in what you described, it's in the fulfillment of what we do. And a lot of people may have money, but they don't have the fulfillment,
And God does pay you in other ways. My kids have had experiences that other kids would never have through Black Ballad. They get opportunities to go to certain places. And my daughter went to a premiere of her favourite show and was absolutely beside herself. And I remember looking at being like, okay, this is worth more than money. This is do you know what I mean? A form of payment. Definitely. We've had experiences that we would never have had as a couple, actually, because we've been doing this work. So, there are other ways that you get paid. But as you said, I think when people around you know what's important to you and your value, I think it also helps you separate your identity from the business. And I think that's a really hard journey in being obedient to God, because you're like, am I the business? Where are the lines? And that's something that I've struggled with a lot in the past. And I think I've finally worked out that, that doesn't define me and who I am. I think I think sometimes I try to think God is using that to refine me into the person that he wants me to be. And I think that's something that I've had to really hear, listen to, and put that first. Because then you make better decisions anyways for the business when you know that you're being used by God, and it's about your relationship with him and crafting you into that person, that woman that you strive to be. And for me, obviously, I've got a daughter and I've got a son, and I want to be a woman that, they look up to, especially for my daughter, it's really important to me. So I've had to really separate that, and I think that's why I've also tried to be so obedient to God in this business, that it's not about me just doing this business, it's about who does he want me to be after all the tests. And by God's grace, the testimonies that come afterwards. So that has been a core part of being obedient to God for me.
It is just a tool in God's hands to really refine us. And one thing I will say for any founder listening, and just for anyone who's trying to go on this founder journey and be faith-led, one of the biggest things obedience does bring is favor. And I think as much as we think money opens doors or like notoriety opens doors, favor opens doors. And what you're saying about when you said, someone said to you that you're not just doing lifestyle, you're doing life-saving. When people feel as though you've had such a big part of their journey, because that's a lot of what our purpose makes us do. It connects us with people who we now get to serve, and that service brings favor, right? People like me and Renee will literally be on the other side of the world. We went to Dubai last year for like our annual friendship getaway retreat. We went to Dubai, we're in the middle of the desert about to go quad biking, and a lady gets off her quad bike and she takes off her helmet and she's like, I listen to your podcast. And we're in the middle of the desert in the Middle East. And we were like, this is why we do what we do, because people are a far better currency than money. And the favor of people brings about pretty much everything you need, right? Like if we're hungry, yes, we can go and buy food, but then your neighbor can open the door and be like, come and eat with me. It's the favor of people that really helps you get through life. And I think when you really walk in your purpose and you really serve people and you take that seriously and you obey God, you gain the favor of God and the favor of man. And that is life-changing. That's what helps you to progress through life. And like, I'm Ghanaian, and in Ashanti culture, we really do talk about how the people you meet on your way up will be the same people who help you on your way down. And I think in this journey of being a founder, everyone we interact with is not just a chess piece on a board. They are a life that we get to touch through our ministry and through our work. And so no matter how that manifests, I think obeying God, if anything keeps you going, it's just knowing that God is favouring you and people will favour you as a result.
Obedience comes with sacrifice, clearly, and especially in a founding journey. And I've just absolutely loved hearing both of your stories and just the way you've spoken. I think also to add, you know, it's so human to just think, and normal to think, God, I'm doing all this for you, I'm carrying this for you. Enjoying it sometimes, not enjoying it other times, but like, do you see me? Like, help me in the middle of it. And I think so much of that is how we learn to trust God, that he is seeing us, that he will provide for us, and actually that we'll see payoff in the end, whether that's financial and it's in the impact of people's lives, and hopefully both, right?
Hopefully both.
So thank you so much for sharing your stories, Courtney, Tobi. It's been just an absolute pleasure to have this conversation.
Thanks for having us. Great. Thank you.
It's been an honour to see Magnify grow to where we are today. If you've loved this conversation and want more from Magnify, why not check out our print magazine?
Across the 10 editions, we've had the privilege of featuring a multiple of changemakers and pioneers, such as Suzanne Hendricks, Jerry Lorenzo, Joe Malone, and many more.
The magazine is a beautiful physical product that makes the perfect coffee table companion to complement your space.
And even more than the look, it creates the perfect excuse to take some time to read a collection of timeless features that will enrich your life, whatever stage you're at. Head to magnifycollective.com/shop to purchase your copy now.
The Magnify Conversations mean so much to us as a team. It really impacts us every day and encourages us so much when we see your comments, your DMs, and to know that these conversations are truly making an impact in the best times of your life, but also challenging, is such an honour. We hope you've enjoyed today, and we can't wait to see you next Monday.